It's Peter Pan. This is a big book, people. It's depth, it's characters. It is a big book, and this is part 7 of why I think children's classics are. Why are these children's classics classics? And as you can tell from beard, hair, and my camera angle, I haven't done this for a while. After I did Treasure Island. Treasure Island was a big one. And Peter Pan is just as big and just as grand. Though Treasure Island focuses on Long John Silver and how big of an iconic character he is, while in Peter Pan, there's a big characters as well. We got Peter, Wendy, Michael, John, and Captain Hook, and the crocodile. And all those names are memorable. All these characters are memorable. Even the name Tiger Lily, we will think of Peter Pan the book. The last book that will ever have this big cast of memorable names would be the Jungle Book with Mowgli, Bagheera, Baloo, and Kaa. But this is just a big book. And the story is that the Darling children, they had some unique experiences and things go full throttle when their parents have to go to this party and Nana, their nurse made of a dog, is locked outside, and that which would let Peter come in with no interruption and lures Wendy away and Michael and John as well. And again, we all know these names and they're iconic. And Peter Pan is a unique book because of the name, Wendy. Because Wendy didn't exist. The name itself. Before Peter Pan, no one named their daughter or thought of naming their daughter Wendy. After Peter Pan, we have Wendy's all over the place. And that's referring to the name Wendy and the restaurant Wendy's. And also, that alone speaks a depth that he thought of a brand new child's name. But also, when you read the book and how Peter takes them to Neverland and suddenly they go on these big adventures, large and small, offside and close too, it's very strange how the book author tried to put all these stories together, and that Peter was more of the student in the formula. Peter wasn't the teacher. Peter isn't the class. Peter is the student. The class are kind of the Lost Boys and Neverland. The teacher, this is where the book Peter Pan really goes unique. Because the teacher is actually Tinkerbell, Wendy, and Captain Hook. Those three in the formula are the teacher. With these characters, with those three, Peter must learn something called emotions. And at the beginning of the book, it states, I'm not going to do it word for word, I'm going to try, but it's like every child grows up. All but one boy. And that's almost kind of the purpose of the book. A lot of people, when they think of Peter Pan, these deep analysis people, they think Peter is the kind of like a harbinger of death, that whenever a child dies, Peter guides them to heaven, aka Neverland. That's one of the themes people have studied from Peter Pan. The way how I read it, though, and the way how it's kind of the book presents itself for me, it's like Peter Pan is the embodiment of childhood. How we are trying to understand emotions. How is it that we can grasp and understand this world? I mean, when Peter in the book says he's going to grow up and probably become all these things, And in the book, when Wendy's about to leave and tries to convince him to leave, he says, well, I become a butcher, or am I supposed to get an office and get papers and do that such? No, I refuse to grow up. And Peter Pan is the consequence of not growing up, and that is you'll never understand this world. He'll never understand adulthood. He runs away from it, and he'll never be a part of it. And what is that? What happens when you are a forever child? You'll be forever banned from understanding the complex emotions. That through Wendy and Tinkerbell, he gets to have a small understanding of what a relationship is. But yet he doesn't grasp it. Because in the book, Tinkerbell, this is the original book, so it's very different than modern day standards, because this was decades and decades ago, almost. I think it's not there yet, but it's getting close to 100 years, I think. And that is when Tinkerbell points out that he's an idiot, he calls him an ass. And when Wendy, he bothers her at times, and she's like, you just don't get it, do you? This is a book about teaching children that being forever a child, you won't have this understanding, and through this book, it kind of leads you to that. Again, Wendy and Tinkerbell are love, how hatred and spite, and what is to be an adult is going to be Captain Hook. And you have the fact that of stepping outside and going in your uncomfortable range is also going to be Captain Hook. And the fact that the exploration of trying to understand what the world is also going to be Wendy. This is a girl that leaves home, goes out, and she has to understand what responsibility is. And Peter wants to understand it as well, but she has more of an understanding than Peter. And so Peter says, I want you to be my mother. And all the Lost Boys says, and so we need a mother, takes her to Neverland to have her be his mother, but not only to him, but to the Lost Boys. It's all about understanding and growing up, but this is to a boy that will refuse to grow up and won't grow up. And that is, he's keeping himself in forever ignorance. And at the ending, and it's very unique how Peter will forever be trapped processing to the point where Wendy will teach him, her daughter will teach him, her daughter's daughter will teach him, her daughter's daughter's daughter will teach him. It suddenly becomes a legacy for Wendy's daughters to always teach Peter Pan how to be a human and how to understand adulthood, with Peter refusing to grow up. That sounds pretty wow. And that alone kind of shows off one of the hidden deeps that is Peter Pan. And another one is one that we all love, the one that we all kind of hitch around, is going to be the relationship of Peter and Captain Hook. You can't have a great book, well, most of the time, but a good book without an antagonist. And if you want an antagonist of children's literature, no one stands out more than Captain Hook and Long John Silver. And again, after reading these two books together and hearing the name barbecue in both books, kind of adds more to the weight of what Captain Hook has, which is explained in the Treasure Island. How I think the author threw barbecue, Long John Silver, into Peter Pan is to give Hook a more of a threat. But also, Hook is this strange symbol of adulthood, how there's this refinement to it, because in the book Captain Hook talks about how he went through school, and it was a school of good form and etiquette and how to be more of a gentleman. And Captain Hook went through that. Captain Hook is a part of that. He has that attached to him. So he's all about good form. But yet, that boy who cut off his hand and fed it to the crocodile, that wasn't good form. That boy needs to be punished. But it was more than just the fact that boy did it. It's more than just revenge. It's the fact that that boy he's ignorant. He's selfish. This kid is an arrogant idiot. And Hook has to put him in place. Hook has to be the disciplinarian to Peter. And Peter will not accept it. It's like childhood almost saying we refuse to be disciplined. We want to be out, be wild and free. We don't want restraints. We want to live and be a child. And Hook has to come and really, with his hook, pull Peter back into place. And you have to have something of a threat to that, and that would be barbecue. Again, putting Hook more on this bigger scale. And how with Hook, there is some form of strength. Well, not really strength, but he has to have this gray area. But his is more darker than Long John's. Because, let's face it, he wants to kill a boy when Long John Silver tried to preserve himself and the boy. Captain Hook is deformed like Long John, but unlike Long John, Captain Hook's deformity becomes part of his identity. Hook. He's famous for it. He actually kind of praises it because now he can actually kill people far more efficiently. And yet, he has this disciplinary thing with his crew. And here is where I think it gets interesting. Again, Long John Silver and Captain Hook both deal with mutiny. Long John tries to keep his men at bay. First mutiny, it was alright. Second mutiny, it was getting close. Third mutiny, he lost. Hook almost had a mutiny. Then he quelled it down. And then there's the second mutiny that comes, and he quells it down as well. And the third mutiny, which is at the climax of the book, where Peter is flying around the ship doing that sound of the crocodile. The men lose it. And in the book, it states that if they were more together, if they weren't as dependent on Captain Hook, they would have more common sense and realize if all men came together, they would have beaten Peter Pan. That the Lost Boys, everyone would have lost. The book points it out. That Captain Hook treated his men too much like dogs, that they became dogs, that they were mindless, that with too much of a discipline, with too much beaten into their heads of what to do, they lost this edge. And Hook kept his men at bay. Hook never really had a true fear of his men, because in the end, he always put them back into place. And he was able to control them, but yet he had too much control over them, that they couldn't have that thought of common sense. So in the end, Hook destroyed himself. If Hook had more compassion, almost, not really compassion, because his relationship with Shmi kept him with compassion. Because with Shmi, in the book, it talks about how everyone loves Shmi. There's this childhood innocence that Shmi has. He's an adult and a child together, where he is he's big and threatening, but yet he is such a bubbly, kind person that the children who are locked, who are trapped on this boat, about to die, Shmi gets their affection almost immediately. That Shmi, Hook was jealous of. because of that affection. That Hook can never get that. He's too much of the form of discipline. He can't stand the fact that Smee has that affection, and he can't kill Smee because Smee has that affection. So it puts Hook in this weird gray spot, not a little bit more darker than Long John, but it's still there. And again, Peter Pan, this is a heavy book, eh? Oh my gosh. And this book is popular. The formula is far more put into a different place with Wendy, Hook, and Tinkerbell all being Peter's teachers. And the relationship with him and Tinkerbell is special, but yet when she dies, spoiler, sorry, she does die in the book. He feels no remorse. He's too much of a child. That with that loss of love, he doesn't understand it. And Wendy is the one that mourns, goes, oh no, you lost that connection. He goes, connection. He's too much of a child. And that's what this book is. It's kind of like helping children to grow, to understand emotions, to be an aid for letting them get through what is known as adulthood. And Peter Pan will never be there. Peter barred himself from it, and he is too much like a child to even care. And Peter Pan has many a movie. And the book author actually, when he was making Peter Pan, when he was done with the book, he made a play. And that play still goes on today. There's also a musical version of the play. Disney on ABC during the 60s, 70s, I think, kind of showcase the play on ABC. And then they did Peter Pan the cartoon. They even did a sequel, Peter Pan Return to Neverland. There's Peter Pan, not by Disney. It came out during 2007 or 5. One of those two, I think, and they were closer to the soul of what Peter Pan is. There's also the movie Pan, starring Hugh Jackman as Blackbeard. Yeah, that happened. And there's also a ballet of Peter Pan as well. I mean, Peter left such a big impact that it still ripples today, that many of us still read today. Though my Treasure Island video was a lot more longer than this one, and there was a lot more lore to it, and there was a lot dealing with the character Long John Silver. Peter Pan, this may be probably one shot of a part, but it was all over the place. There was so much going on. I bet there's so much more I missed. And all I have to say is, Peter Pan. There's so much in this. It is good. It is worth the read. It is worth the depth and analysis. There's a reason why this one is probably one of the most outstanding classics. And it's Peter Pan that I just went through. It was a big one, people.